The morning mist clung to the hills surrounding Porterville, California, when Zara Zimmerman found the foreclosure notice nailed to her farmhouse door. Her fingers trembled as she tore the official document from the weathered wood, the black ink stark against the white paper like a death sentence. The year was 1878, and for a 25-year-old woman who had spent her entire life on this land, the world was collapsing around her. 3 days, she whispered, her breath visible in the early spring chill. 3 days to vacate. Zara had known this day might come. After her father's passing last winter, she'd struggled to keep up with the mortgage payments to Porterville National Bank. The drought that plagued the San Joaquin Valley hadn't helped. Her crops had withered in the fields, and she'd been forced to sell most of her livestock at a fraction of their worth. She straightened her shoulders and marched toward the barn, where the last of her possessions awaited packing. The farm had been in the Zimmerman family for 2 generations. Her grandfather had staked his claim during the gold rush of '49, and her father had expanded the homestead to a respectable 80 acres of fertile land. Now it would all belong to Malcolm Jennings, the bank president with cold eyes and an even colder heart. Inside the barn, Zara knelt beside the wooden chest containing her mother's wedding dress, her father's pocket watch, and a handful of family photographs, the only treasures worth saving. Her single milk cow lowed softly from its stall, as if sensing the change that hung in the air. "I know, Bessie," Zara murmured. "I don't know where we'll go either." 3 days later, Zara stood on the road watching as bank men nailed boards across her front door. Malcolm Jennings himself supervised the proceedings, his expensive suit and polished boots a stark contrast to the dusty surroundings. "Miss Zimmerman," he said, tipping his hat with mock courtesy, "I trust you found other accommodations." Zara clutched the reins of her old mare, who was laden with her meager belongings. "I've made arrangements," she lied, her voice steady despite the rage and grief that threatened to choke her. Jennings smiled, revealing teeth as white as the banker's papers that had stolen her legacy. "Excellent. The bank wishes you well in your future endeavors." He turned away, dismissing her as easily as he had dismissed her desperate pleas for an extension on the loan. As dusk fell, Zara led Bessie and her mare back to the property, slipping through the orchard to avoid being seen from the road. The house was locked and sealed, but the barn remained accessible. She would stay there tonight, she decided. Just one night to say goodbye to the land that had cradled her since birth. The barn was cold but familiar. Zara spread her bedroll in the empty stall where her father's prize stallion had once stood and settled in for a night of uneasy sleep. Outside, an owl called mournfully, and somewhere in the distance, coyotes began their nightly chorus. "Just for tonight," she whispered to herself. "Tomorrow I'll figure out what comes next." But tomorrow brought no clarity, only a bone-deep weariness and nowhere to go. The nearby town of Porterville offered few opportunities for a woman alone, especially one with no money and no prospects. So she stayed another night, and then another. By the end of the week, Zara had established a routine. She slept in the barn, bathed in the creek that cut through the back of the property, and foraged for food in the orchard and vegetable garden that the bank men hadn't yet destroyed. She kept Bessie hidden in a small clearing in the woods during daylight hours, bringing her to the barn only after darkness fell. It was during her second week of this precarious existence that Zara heard horses approaching one evening. Peering through a crack in the barn wall, she saw 3 riders silhouetted against the sunset. One dismounted and approached the boarded-up farmhouse while the others waited, her heart hammered against her ribs. Had Jennings sent men to check on the property? Would they discover her illegal tenancy and have her arrested? Zara backed away from the wall and quickly gathered her few possessions, prepared to flee into the orchard if necessary. The barn door creaked open, sending shafts of fading sunlight across the dirt floor. Zara pressed herself against the back wall, hoping the shadows would conceal her presence. A tall figure stepped inside, pausing to let his eyes adjust to the dimness. "Hello," he called, his voice deep and cautious. "Is someone in here?" Zara remained silent, barely breathing. The man moved further inside, his spurs jingling with each step. He stopped by the stall where Zara had been sleeping and crouched down, picking up a hairpin she dropped earlier. "I know someone's here," he said, turning the pin over in his gloved hands. "I'm not looking to cause trouble. Just checking out the property." Something in his tone, a lack of threat, perhaps gave Zara the courage to step forward. "This is private property," she said, emerging from the shadows. The man straightened, his expression surprised but not unkind. He was younger than she'd expected, perhaps 30, with a weathered face that spoke of long days under the sun. His clothing marked him as a working man, sturdy denims, a simple shirt, and a dust-covered hat that he now removed. "Samuel Maddox," he said, inclining his head. "Though most folks call me Sam." Zara hesitated, then straightened her shoulders. "Zara Zimmerman. Was my farm." Recognition flickered in his eyes. "The foreclosure, I heard about it in town." He glanced around the barn. "Are you living here?" "Just until I find somewhere else to go," she said defensively. Sam nodded thoughtfully. "Does the bank know you're still here?" "What do you think?" Zara crossed her arms. "What are you doing here anyway? Are you working for Jennings?" Sam laughed, a short, sharp sound without humor. "No, madam. I wouldn't work for that robber if he was the last man paying wages in California." He gestured toward the farmhouse. "I heard the property was for sale. Thought I'd have a look." Zara's heart sank. Of course, Jennings would waste no time selling her family's land to the highest bidder. "Well, now you've seen it," she said bitterly. Sam studied her face for a long moment. "Miss Zimmerman, I don't mean to pry, but do you have anywhere to go? Family nearby?" "That's none of your concern," Zara replied, even as her mind acknowledged the truth. She had no one. Her mother had died in childbirth with a brother who hadn't survived. Her father's sister lived in Boston, a distant figure known only through occasional letters. Sam nodded, accepting her rebuff. "Fair enough." He replaced his hat. "I'll be leaving you to your evening then. But Miss Zimmerman." "Yes. If bank men come checking, you might want to hide your things better." He pointed to her mother's shawl hanging on a nail by the stall. "That's visible from the doorway." With that, he turned and left, pulling the barn door closed behind him. Zara listened as he rejoined his companions, their voices a low murmur that soon faded as they rode away. She sank onto her bedroll, her mind racing. Who was Samuel Maddox, and was he truly interested in buying her farm? The thought of someone else living in her home, tending her orchards, and harvesting from fields her father had plowed by hand was almost too painful to bear. The next morning, Zara was awakened by the distant sound of hammering. Cautiously, she crept to the barn door and peered out. What she saw made her gasp in dismay. Workers were already busy in the north field, driving stakes into the ground. A surveyor with a theodolite was taking measurements, while several men unloaded lumber from a wagon. Standing in the midst of this activity, conferring with what appeared to be a foreman, was Samuel Maddox. Anger surged through Zara. The man had wasted no time in staking his claim. He must have ridden straight to Jennings after leaving last night, eager to snap up the property before anyone else could bid. Without thinking of the consequences, Zara stormed across the yard toward the field, her skirts billowing around her. "Mr. Maddox," she called sharply. Sam turned, surprise evident on his face as he watched her approach. The workers paused in their tasks, eyeing the confrontation with interest. "Miss Zimmerman," Sam said, stepping forward to meet her. "Good morning." "Is it?" she demanded, hands on her hips. "I see you've already begun making changes. The bank certainly didn't waste any time selling you my family's land." Sam's expression remained calm in the face of her anger. "Actually, the sale hasn't been finalized yet. I'm just getting a head start." "On what?" "Tearing down everything my father built." A flicker of something hurt, perhaps, crossed Sam's face. "No, madam. On building something new alongside it." He gestured to the plans spread out on a makeshift table. "I'm adding irrigation channels to connect with the river. Should help during the dry seasons." Zara blinked, momentarily derailed. Irrigation had been her father's dream, but they'd never had the capital to implement such an extensive system. She glanced at the plans despite herself. "The soil here is good," Sam continued, "but water management is what makes or breaks a farm in this valley. I've seen too many good people lose everything because they couldn't get water to their crops when it mattered most." Zara looked away, the painful accuracy of his words striking too close to home. "So you're an expert on farming now." "Not claiming to be an expert," Sam replied. "Just learned some hard lessons over the years." He paused, studying her face. "Miss Zimmerman, I understand you're angry. This land means something to you, but standing out here arguing with me isn't going to change what's happened." "And what would you suggest I do instead, Mr. Maddox?" "Simply accept that everything my family worked for is gone." Sam's expression softened. "I'd suggest you let me help you." Zara's laugh was bitter. "Help me? By taking my home?" "By giving you a job," he countered. "I could use someone who knows this land, someone who understands its rhythms and quirks." He gestured to the fields beyond. "No map or deed can tell me which fields drain poorly after heavy rain or where the soil needs extra attention." Zara stared at him, speechless. Work for the man who bought her farm. The very idea was insulting. And yet, what were her alternatives? "I don't need your charity," she said finally. "It's not charity if you're earning your keep," Sam replied. "And I'm not offering you a handout, I'm offering fair wages for valuable knowledge." He hesitated, then added, "plus room and board in your own home." Zara's head snapped up. "What?" "The house needs someone living in it," Sam said with a shrug that seemed a little too casual. "I've got a place in town. No sense letting a good farmhouse sit empty." Suspicion warred with hope in Zara's heart. Was this some kind of trick? Or worse, was he expecting more than just her knowledge of the land in exchange for this arrangement? As if reading her thoughts, Sam added, "My foreman's wife would be living there too. She's coming up from Bakersfield next week. Mrs. Oates is a formidable woman. You'd have proper chaperonage if that's your concern." Zara flushed, embarrassed that her thoughts had been so transparent. "I'll consider it," she said stiffly. Sam nodded. "That's all I ask." He turned back to the foreman, who had been pretending not to listen to their conversation. "Johnson, make sure those stakes follow the contour lines exactly. We can't afford to waste a drop of water once the system is in place." Taking this as a dismissal, Zara walked back toward the barn, her mind in turmoil. Working for the man who now owned her family's farm felt like a betrayal of everything she held dear. But the alternative, leaving this land, completely, seemed even worse. By midday, hunger forced Zara to venture to the vegetable garden. She knelt among the rows of early spring greens, harvesting what she needed with practiced hands. Lost in thought, she didn't hear the approaching footsteps until a shadow fell across the garden bed. "Those radishes look mighty fine." Zara looked up to find Sam standing at the edge of the garden, a canteen in one hand and a cloth-wrapped package in the other. "Mrs. Chen at the boarding house packed too much lunch," he said, holding out the package. "Thought you might be hungry." Zara's pride battled with her empty stomach. pride lost. "Thank you," she said, accepting the offering. Sam settled on an overturned crate nearby, unscrewing the cap of his canteen. "You know," he said conversationally, "I grew up on a farm not unlike this one, up north near Sacramento." Zara unwrapped the lunch: cold chicken, cornbread, and pickled vegetables. Her mouth watered at the sight. "What happened to it?" she asked, breaking off a piece of cornbread. Sam's face clouded briefly. "War happened. I enlisted in '62. By the time I came home in '65, my father had passed, and my mother had sold the place to pay debts." He took a drink from his canteen. "I was 22 with nothing to my name except army wages and the horse the government let me keep." Despite herself, Zara felt a twinge of sympathy. "So you understand what it means to lose your home?" "I do," Sam said simply. "Which is why I'm offering you a chance to stay connected to yours, even if the circumstances aren't what you'd choose." Zara ate in silence for a moment, considering his words. "If I were to accept your offer," she said finally, "what exactly would my duties be?" "To start, helping me understand this land," Sam replied. "Where the water naturally flows, which fields produce best in which seasons, what crops have thrived here in the past." He gestured toward the orchard. "Those apple trees, for instance, they look to be about 15 years old, but some are clearly doing better than others. I'd want to know why." "The eastern rows get more morning sun," Zara said automatically, "and the soil drains better there after the spring rains." "My father always said the western section needed more compost to break up the clay." Sam smiled. "See, that kind of knowledge is invaluable." He stood, brushing crumbs from his trousers. "Think about it, Miss Zimmerman. The offer stands." As he walked away, Zara found herself watching him with conflicted emotions. There was something honest about Samuel Maddox that she couldn't deny, a straightforwardness that was rare in her experience with men, especially since her father's passing. But trusting him meant accepting that her family's farm now belonged to someone else, and that was a bitter pill to swallow. Over the next 2 days, Zara observed the progress on the irrigation project from a distance. The workers seemed competent, and Sam was clearly knowledgeable about water management systems. She caught herself wondering what her father would have thought of the improvements, then quickly pushed such thoughts away. It didn't matter what he would have thought, the farm wasn't theirs anymore. On the 3rd day, as Zara was drawing water from the well, she noticed a familiar figure approaching on horseback. Malcolm Jennings, his expensive suit replaced by riding clothes that still managed to look ostentatious, guided his horse toward the farmhouse. Behind him rode 2 bank men, their expressions grim. Zara ducked behind the well housing, her heart racing. Had Jennings discovered she was still living on the property? Would he have her arrested for trespassing? Jennings dismounted and surveyed the construction activity with evident displeasure. "Where is Maddox?" he demanded of the nearest worker. "Over by the creek, sir," the man replied, pointing toward the eastern boundary of the property. Jennings stalked in that direction, his men following like obedient hounds. Zara hesitated only briefly before setting down her water bucket and following at a distance, keeping to the cover of the orchard trees. She found Sam standing knee-deep in the creek, studying the flow of water. Jennings stood on the bank, his posture rigid with barely contained anger. "This was not part of our agreement, Maddox," the banker was saying. "You said you would wait until after the sale was finalized before beginning any work." Sam looked up, seemingly unsurprised by the banker's arrival. "Time waits for no man, Jennings. Especially not when there's planting to be done." "You're trespassing on bank property," Jennings snapped. "I could have you arrested." Sam waded to the shore, water streaming from his boots. "You could," he agreed mildly. "But then who would buy this land at the price you're asking?" Word around town is that no one else is interested, given the drought conditions. Jennings's face flushed an ugly red. We had an agreement, 20% down with the remainder due upon completion of the sale. And you'll get your money, Sam assured him. But I'm making improvements that will increase the value of this property. You should be thanking me. I didn't authorize these improvements, Jennings's voice rose, and I've received reports that someone has been living in the barn. If you're harboring the Zimmerman girl, I'm not harboring anyone, Sam interrupted, his tone hardening for the first time. But speaking of Miss Zimmerman, I understand she tried to negotiate a payment plan with you before the foreclosure. Jennings scoffed. A woman has no business trying to run a farm. The bank was doing her a favor by taking it off her hands. From her hiding place, Zara clenched her fists, rage burning in her chest. A favor, Sam repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. Is that what you call forcing someone from their family home? I call it business, Maddox. Something you'd understand if you weren't so busy playing the hero. Jennings straightened his riding jacket. I expect the remainder of the payment by Friday, or I'll find another buyer. And if I discover anyone living illegally on this property, I'll have them removed. Is that clear, Crystal? Sam replied, his expression unreadable. After Jennings and his men departed, Zara emerged from her hiding place. Sam was still standing by the creek, staring after the banker with a look of disgust. You heard all that, I take it, he said without turning around. Most of it, Zara admitted. You're buying the farm from him. That was the plan. Sam finally looked at her, his expression troubled. Miss Zimmerman, there's something I should tell you. No, she interrupted. I've made my decision. I accept your offer of employment. Surprise flickered across Sam's face. You do? On one condition, Zara continued. You teach me everything you know about irrigation systems and modern farming techniques. A slow smile spread across Sam's face. I think that can be arranged. And one more thing, Zara added, straightening her shoulders. I want to be treated as an equal partner in the management of this farm, not just a hired hand with special knowledge. Sam considered this for a moment, then nodded. Agreed. But if we're going to be partners of a sort, you should probably start calling me Sam. Very well, Sam. The name felt strange on her tongue, too familiar after days of thinking of him as Mr. Maddox, the usurper. And I'll call you Zara, if that's acceptable. It is, she replied, then added with a touch of defiance. It's my farm you're buying, after all. We might as well be on a first-name basis. Something like regret flashed in Sam's eyes, but he merely nodded. Johnson's wife is arriving tomorrow. She'll help you get the house in order, if you'd like to move back in. I would, Zara said, surprised by the intensity of her longing to sleep in her own bed again. As she walked back to the barn to gather her few possessions, Zara wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. Working alongside the man who now owned her family's legacy seemed like a betrayal. But the alternative, walking away completely, was unthinkable. That night, as she prepared for her final sleep in the barn, Zara found herself remembering the look on Malcolm Jennings's face when Sam had confronted him about the foreclosure. There had been something almost like fear beneath the banker's bluster, something that suggested Sam Maddox might be more formidable than his easygoing manner suggested. The following morning dawned clear and bright. Zara rose early, eager despite herself to return to the farmhouse. She was crossing the yard when a wagon rolled up the long drive, a robust woman with iron-gray hair holding the reins. You must be Miss Zimmerman, the woman called cheerfully as she drew the team to a halt. I'm Henrietta Oates. My husband is the unfortunate soul trying to keep those lazy workers in line. She climbed down from the wagon seat with surprising agility for a woman of her size. Samuel said you'd be moving back into the house today. I've brought some supplies to get us started. Zara found herself smiling at Henrietta's brisk manner. It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Oates. And yes, I was hoping to return to the house today. Call me Henrietta, dear. Mrs. Oates makes me sound like my mother-in-law, and that woman was a terror if ever there was one. She gestured toward the wagon. Help me unload these provisions, and we'll have the place habitable by nightfall. Working alongside Henrietta proved to be a pleasant distraction. The older woman had a no-nonsense approach to housekeeping, and a seemingly endless supply of stories about her life with Mr. Oates, who had been a foreman on ranches and farms throughout California. Samuel is a good man, Henrietta remarked, as they swept years of dust from the parlor floor. Been working with my husband for 3 years now, never met a more fair-minded employer. Zara made a non-committal sound, unwilling to either agree or disagree. He told me about your situation, Henrietta continued, undeterred by Zara's silence. Said you got a raw deal from that banker. Mr. Maddox seems to have opinions about many things that don't concern him, Zara replied, sweeping with perhaps more force than necessary. Henrietta chuckled. That's Samuel for you. Always sticking his nose in where he thinks there's an injustice being done. She paused in her work, leaning on her broom. Did he tell you how he and my husband met? Zara shook her head. Johnson was working for the Hargrove Ranch. Terrible place, terrible man running it. When one of the hands got thrown from a horse and broke his back, Hargrove refused to pay him what was owed, claimed the man had been drinking on the job. Henrietta's eyes flashed with remembered anger. Samuel was passing through, heard the story at the local saloon, and decided to get involved. Ended up paying the injured man's wages out of his own pocket, then offering Johnson a job when Hargrove fired him for speaking up about it. That was generous of him, Zara admitted. Generous, yes, but also smart, Henrietta said. Samuel knows good people are worth investing in. It's why he's been successful where others have failed. She resumed her sweeping. And it's why I suspect he saw something worth saving in this farm, too. By late afternoon, the farmhouse was transformed. The windows gleamed, the floors shone, and fresh linens adorned the beds. Zara stood in the doorway of her childhood bedroom, emotion welling in her throat at the sight of her familiar quilt spread across the mattress. I found it in the cedar chest, Henrietta explained, appearing behind her. Thought you might like to have it back on your bed. Thank you, Zara whispered, unable to express how much the simple gesture meant to her. Henrietta squeezed her shoulder. Supper will be ready in an hour. I've invited Samuel and Johnson to join us to celebrate getting the house back in order. After the older woman departed, Zara sat on the edge of her bed, running her hands over the quilt her mother had made for her 16th birthday. Being back in the house stirred a complex mix of emotions: relief at the familiar comfort, gratitude for Sam's unexpected kindness, but also a deep-seated resentment that she now occupied her family home only through his benevolence. The sound of horses in the yard drew her to the window. Sam and Johnson had arrived, both men dusty and tired looking after a day in the fields. They dismounted, and Sam paused to look up at the house, his gaze finding her window as if drawn there. Their eyes met briefly before Zara stepped back from the glass, her heart beating unexpectedly fast. Supper was a surprisingly jovial affair. Johnson Oates proved to be as talkative as his wife, regaling them with tales of his adventures across California. Sam was quieter, contributing occasionally to the conversation, but seeming content to let the Otises carry the bulk of the social burden. Zara found herself studying him when he wasn't looking the way the lamplight caught the angles of his face, the careful attention he paid when others were speaking, the the respect with which he treated Henrietta's opinions. He wasn't what she had expected in a man who could afford to buy her farm outright. "So, Miss Zimmerman," Johnson said as Henrietta served apple pie, "Samuel tells me you'll be helping us understand how to get the best from this land." "That's the plan," Zara replied. "Though I'm still learning myself. My father was the true expert." "Learning is what life's all about," Johnson declared. "Why, I remember when I first started working cattle, couldn't tell a heifer from a steer without checking underneath." Henrietta swatted his arm. "Johnson." Not at the supper table. The conversation flowed easily after that, and Zara found herself laughing for the first time since her father's death. As the evening drew to a close, Sam stood to leave. "I should get back to town," he said. "Early start tomorrow." "You're welcome to stay here," Henrietta offered. "We've cleaned the spare room." Sam shook his head. "Thank you, but I've paid for the week at Mrs. Chen's. No sense wasting the money." He turned to Zara. "If you're amenable, I thought we might tour the property together tomorrow. You could show me the areas you think would benefit most from irrigation." "I'd be happy to," Zara replied, surprised by her own sincerity. After Sam and Johnson departed the latter to the small cabin near the barn where the Otises would be living, Zara helped Henrietta clear the supper dishes. "It's nice to see you smile," the older woman remarked as they worked. "Samuel said you were fierce as a mama bear when you first met him. Glad to see there's some sweetness under that protective growl." Zara flushed. "He caught me at a difficult moment." "Difficult moments have a way of revealing our true character," Henrietta replied wisely. "Both yours and his." That night, sleeping in her own bed for the first time in weeks, Zara dreamed of her father. In the dream, he was showing a younger version of herself how to test soil for planting, his hands strong and sure as they crumbled earth between his fingers. "The land will tell you what it needs," he was saying, "if you learn how to listen." She woke with tears on her cheeks, but a strange sense of peace in her heart. Perhaps working with Sam wasn't a betrayal of her father's legacy, but a continuation of it, a way to ensure the land they both loved would continue to flourish. The next morning, Zara dressed in her most practical work clothes, a simple skirt and blouse that wouldn't impede movement in the fields. She braided her dark hair tightly and donned a wide-brimmed hat to protect against the spring sun. Sam arrived just after breakfast, riding a handsome chestnut gelding. He dismounted with easy grace when he saw Zara waiting on the porch. "Good morning," he called, leading his horse to the hitching post. "I've brought a mount for you if you're comfortable riding. Thought it might make covering the property easier." Zara eyed the second horse, a gentle-looking bay mare. "I can ride," she confirmed. In truth, she had practically grown up on horseback, but it had been months since she'd had the luxury of riding for anything but absolute necessity. They set off toward the northern fields, where the irrigation work had begun. Sam listened attentively as Zara pointed out areas where water tended to pool after heavy rains, which fields dried out first during hot spells, and which soil types predominated in different sections of the property. "Your father was smart to plant the orchard here," Sam remarked as they rode beneath the apple trees. "The slope provides natural drainage, and they're protected from the worst of the north winds." "He planted most of these trees the year I was born," Zara said, reaching up to touch a budding branch as they passed. "Said he was investing in my future." Sam glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "He sounds like a wise man." "He was," Zara replied softly. "He taught me everything I know about farming." They continued their circuit of the property, stopping occasionally for Sam to make notes or examine the soil more closely. By midday, they had reached the southern boundary, where a stand of oak trees provided welcome shade. "Shall we stop for lunch?" Sam suggested, gesturing to the saddlebags he'd brought. "Henrietta packed enough for an army, I suspect." They settled beneath the largest oak, spreading a blanket on the new spring grass. Sam unpacked bread, cheese, cold chicken, and a jar of pickled vegetables. He handed Zara a canteen of cool water. "Thank you," she said, taking a grateful sip. The morning's ride had left her thirstier than she'd realized. "You know this land well," Sam remarked as they ate. "Better than any map could show." "I should," Zara replied. "I've lived here all my life." Sam nodded, his expression turning serious. "Which makes what happened all the more unjust." Zara stiffened. "I don't need your pity, Mr. Maddox." "Sam," he corrected gently. "And it's not pity I'm offering, Zara, it's understanding." He leaned back against the tree trunk, his eyes on the distant fields. "When I lost my family's farm, I swore I'd have land of my own again someday. Took me 10 years of working for others, saving every penny, learning everything I could about modern farming techniques." "And now you have your land," Zara said, unable to keep the bitterness entirely from her voice. Sam looked at her directly. "I do, but that doesn't mean I don't recognize the pain of your loss." Zara met his gaze, struck by the genuine empathy she saw there. "Thank you," she said finally, "for understanding and for letting me stay." "You belong here," Sam said simply. "Anyone can see that." They finished their meal in companionable silence, the spring breeze rustling the new leaves overhead. As they prepared to mount up and continue their tour, Zara found herself wondering about the man beside her, what experiences had shaped him, what dreams drove him, and why he seemed so determined to help her when he had no obligation to do so. The afternoon was spent examining the western fields, where the irrigation project would eventually extend. Sam explained his vision for a system that would bring water from the creek to even the most distant corners of the property. "The initial investment is substantial," he admitted as they studied the nascent channels, "but the long-term benefits make it worthwhile. A farm that can weather drought years is a farm that survives." "Is that why you wanted this land?" Zara asked. "Because you saw its potential with proper irrigation," Sam hesitated before answering. "Partly," he said finally, "but there were other considerations as well." Before Zara could press for details, Johnson rode up with urgent news. "Jennings is on his way," the foreman reported. One of the hands saw him leaving town, headed this direction. Sam's expression hardened. "Ride back and continue work as normal. I'll deal with Jennings." As Johnson departed, Zara turned to Sam with alarm. "If he finds me here, let me handle Jennings," Sam interrupted, his voice calm but firm. "You've every right to be on this property now." They rode back to the farmhouse, arriving just as Malcolm Jennings and a single companion crested the hill at the end of the drive. Sam dismounted and helped Zara down from her horse, his hands strong and steady at her waist. "Remember," he murmured, "you have nothing to be ashamed of." Jennings reined in his horse sharply when he spotted Zara standing beside Sam. His face darkened with anger. "What is the meaning of this, Maddox? I told you she has no right to be here." "Miss Zimmerman is my employee now," Sam replied evenly, "and as such she has every right to be on property I'm in the process of purchasing." "Employee," Jennings scoffed. "Is that what you're calling it? The whole town will know she's living here unmarried, under the same roof as the very respectable Mr. and Mrs. Oates," Sam cut in, his voice taking on a dangerous edge. "I suggest you choose your next words carefully, Jennings. Impugning a lady's reputation is a serious matter." The banker's companion shifted uncomfortably in his saddle, clearly wishing to be elsewhere. Jennings seemed to notice his discomfort and reined in his temper with visible effort. "The final payment is due tomorrow," he said stiffly. "I expect it by noon, or our agreement is void." "You'll have your money," Sam assured him. "Now, if there's nothing else, we have work to return to." Jennings glared at Zara, his contempt barely concealed. "You should have accepted my offer when you had the chance, Miss Zimmerman. A woman with no prospects shouldn't be so proud." Zara felt Sam stiffen beside her. "What offer?" he asked quietly. "Nothing that concerns you," Jennings snapped, turning his horse. "Tomorrow, Maddox, noon." With that, he rode away, his companion following hastily. Once they were out of sight, Zara released a shaky breath. "Thank you for intervening." Sam's expression was troubled. What did he mean about an offer? Zara looked away, embarrassment and anger burning in her chest. "After my father died, Jennings suggested that if I were to become his mistress, he might be persuaded to extend the loan terms." She lifted her chin defiantly. "I showed him the door with my father's shotgun." Sam's face darkened with fury. "That explains a lot," he said grimly, "including why he was so eager to foreclose despite your attempts to negotiate." "It doesn't matter now," Zara said, although the memory still stung. "It matters," Sam insisted. "Jennings has been using his position at the bank to prey on vulnerable women. You may not have been his first victim, but I intend to make sure you're his last." The cold determination in his voice sent a shiver down Zara's spine. There was steel beneath Sam Maddox's genial exterior, a hardness forged, perhaps, by the same war that had cost him his family's farm. "How?" she asked simply. Sam's expression softened as he looked at her. "One step at a time. First, we secure your home. Then we deal with Jennings." That evening, after Sam had returned to town, Zara sat on the porch with Henrietta, watching the sunset paint the western sky in shades of gold and crimson. The older woman was mending a shirt by the last of the daylight, her needle flashing steadily. "Samuel seemed upset when he left," Henrietta remarked without looking up from her work. "Something happened with that banker." Zara hesitated, then decided that Henrietta had earned her trust. She related the encounter with Jennings, including the revelation about his improper offer after her father's death. Henrietta's needle stilled. "That explains why Samuel's been so fired up about this whole business," she said thoughtfully. "He can't abide men who abuse their power, especially against women." "He seems very protective," Zara observed. "Lost his sister to a man like that," Henrietta replied, her voice matter of fact but her eyes sad. "During the war, while Samuel was away fighting. Some smooth-talking speculator convinced her to sign over her inheritance in exchange for marriage. Once he had the money, he abandoned her. She died in a charity hospital before Samuel could get home." "How terrible," Zara murmured, her heart aching for the young soldier returning to find both home and family gone. "Changed him," Henrietta continued. "Made him determined to fight injustice wherever he found it. Johnson says sometimes it gets him into trouble, but I say the world needs more men willing to stand up for what's right." Later, lying in bed, Zara found herself wondering about the man Sam had become after such loss. Beneath his capable exterior and easy manner, there clearly burned a fierce sense of justice, one that had somehow led him to her doorstep at precisely the moment she needed help most. The next morning dawned bright and clear, promising a beautiful spring day. Zara rose early, eager to begin work on the garden plot she had discussed with Sam the previous day. The irrigation system would eventually reach this area, but in the meantime, she wanted to plant early vegetables that could be sustained with water carried from the well. She was marking out rows when the sound of approaching horses drew her attention. Looking up, she was surprised to see not only Sam but also several other men, including the town's sheriff and a distinguished-looking gentleman she recognized as Judge Wilson from her infrequent visits to Porterville. Sam dismounted and approached her, his expression both grave and somehow triumphant. Good morning, Zara. I'm sorry to disrupt your work, but there's a matter we need to discuss. Alarmed by the official presence, Zara set down her tools. Is something wrong? Has Jennings won't be troubling you anymore, Sam assured her. Or anyone else, for that matter. He gestured toward the house. Perhaps we could speak privately. Inside, with Henrietta providing coffee for their unexpected guests, Sam explained the purpose of their visit. After our conversation yesterday, I did some investigating, he began. It seems you weren't the only woman Jennings had propositioned in exchange for favorable bank terms, but most were too afraid or ashamed to come forward. Until Samuel started asking questions, Judge Wilson interjected, stirring sugar into his coffee. Then the stories came pouring out. Widows, unmarried women running businesses, even a young bride whose husband is away working on the railroad, all subjected to Jennings's special arrangements. The bank board has suspended him pending a full investigation, the sheriff added, and there may be criminal charges, depending on what we find in the bank records. Zara sat in stunned silence, trying to absorb this sudden turn of events. But what does this mean for the farm, for the sale? Sam exchanged glances with the judge. That's why we're here, Zara. In light of the circumstances, Judge Wilson has issued an injunction halting all property transactions initiated by Jennings until the investigation is complete. Including this farm, Zara asked, hope flaring in her chest. Including this farm, Sam confirmed. The foreclosure and subsequent sale agreement are on hold. Joy surged through Zara, followed immediately by confusion. She turned to Sam. But that means you don't own the farm, you've been investing in property that isn't legally yours. A strange expression crossed Sam's face, something between embarrassment and satisfaction. I was hoping the improvements would increase the property's value regardless of who ultimately owned it. Judge Wilson cleared his throat. There's more, Miss Zimmerman. Given the suspicious nature of your foreclosure, particularly in light of Jennings's pattern of behavior, I've recommended to the bank board that they review your case specifically. If they find irregularities, as I suspect they will, you may be offered the opportunity to reclaim your property under new terms. Tears sprang to Zara's eyes. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Thank you, Your Honor. Don't thank me, the judge replied, nodding toward Sam. Thank Maddox here. He's the one who wouldn't let this injustice stand. After the officials departed, Zara found herself alone with Sam in the parlor, 1,000 questions competing for expression. Why? She asked finally. Why go to all this trouble for a stranger? Sam's gaze was steady. Because it was the right thing to do. But the money you've already invested in the irrigation system, the workers, the materials, you could lose it all if the bank decides not to sell to you. Some things are more important than money, Sam said simply, like justice. Like justice, he agreed, and like seeing the rightful owner remain on land that's been in her family for generations. Zara studied his face, searching for some hidden motive and finding none. I still don't understand. You wanted this farm. You were prepared to buy it. Sam sighed, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of uncharacteristic nervousness. I wanted to help you, Zara. From the moment I heard in town about what was happening, a young woman losing her family farm to Jennings's bank, despite attempts to negotiate, I knew something wasn't right. I've seen Jennings's type before, men who use their power to take advantage of those with less. So you decided to buy my farm. To help me. Zara's brow furrowed in confusion. My original plan was to buy it and then offer to sell it back to you on fair terms with time to pay, Sam admitted. But when I found you living in the barn that night, I realized the situation was more dire than I'd thought. And the irrigation system, the improvements, the farm needs them, regardless of who owns it in the end, Sam said. If it's returned to you, as I hope it will be, you'll have a more viable operation that can weather future challenges." Zara shook her head in wonder. "You're a very unusual man, Samuel Maddox." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "I've been called worse." In the days that followed, work continued on the irrigation system despite the uncertain ownership situation. Sam explained that he considered it an investment in the community's future, not just in a single property. "Water management benefits everyone in the valley," he told Zara as they inspected the progress one afternoon. "What we learn here can help other farms implement similar systems." Zara found herself increasingly impressed by Sam's knowledge and vision. He combined practical farming experience with innovative ideas about agriculture that looked toward the future, while respecting traditional practices. More than that, she found herself drawn to the man himself, his quiet strength, his unwavering sense of right and wrong, the gentle humor that occasionally broke through his serious demeanor. Working alongside him day after day, she began to see beyond the initial resentment she had felt at his purchase of her farm. For his part, Sam seemed to genuinely value Zara's insights about the land. He sought her opinion on decisions large and small, from the positioning of water channels to which fields should be prioritized for planting. Their partnership, born of such unusual circumstances, had developed into something neither had anticipated: a shared vision for what the farm could become. 2 weeks after the confrontation with Jennings, Zara received a letter from the bank board requesting her presence at a special meeting. She showed the letter to Sam, anxiety evident in her expression. "What do you think it means?" she asked, her fingers worrying the edge of the paper. "I think it means they've completed their review of your case," Sam replied. "Would you like me to accompany you to the meeting?" Zara hesitated, torn between the desire for support and the need to handle this matter independently. "I should go alone," she decided finally. "This is between me and the bank." Sam nodded, respecting her choice. "I understand, but I'll be in town if you need me." The morning of the meeting, Zara dressed in her best skirt and blouse, clothes she hadn't worn since her father's funeral. Henrietta helped her arrange her hair in a style that was both practical and presentable. "You look like a woman who knows her own mind," the older woman approved. "Those bankers won't know what hit them." The bank board comprised 5 men, all prominent citizens of Porterville. They sat behind a long table in the bank's private meeting room, their expressions varying from sympathetic to cautious as Zara was shown in. "Miss Zimmerman," the chairman greeted her. "Thank you for coming. Please be seated." Zara sat, her back straight and her hands folded in her lap to disguise their slight trembling. "We've completed our review of your father's loan and the subsequent foreclosure," the chairman continued. "In light of Mr. Jennings's inappropriate conduct, we've had to scrutinize many of his dealings with particular care." "And what have you found regarding my case?" Zara asked, proud of the steadiness in her voice. The board members exchanged glances. "We've found irregularities," the chairman admitted. "Specifically, it appears that certain payments your father made were never properly credited to his account. Furthermore, the interest rate applied to your loan was higher than the terms specified in the original agreement." Relief and vindication washed over Zara. Her father had always been meticulous about his financial affairs. She had known, in her heart, that something wasn't right about the foreclosure. "Given these findings," the chairman continued, "the board has decided to rescind the foreclosure and reinstate your loan under the correct terms." He slid a document across the table. "This agreement outlines the adjusted balance and payment schedule. You'll note that when your father's uncredited payments are properly applied, the loan is actually current, not in arrears as Jennings claimed." Zara stared at the document, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "You're saying the farm is still mine, legally?" "It is," the chairman confirmed. "Though we understand you've permitted Mr. Maddox to begin improvements on the property. The board would be happy to discuss financing options if you wish to compensate him for those investments." "That won't be necessary," came a familiar voice from the doorway. Zara turned to find Sam standing there, hat in hand. "I thought you weren't coming," she said, surprised by his presence. "I said I'd be in town if you needed me," he replied with a small smile. Then, addressing the board, "Any improvements I've made to Miss Zimmerman's property were done with her permission and at my own risk. I make no claim against her or the land." The chairman raised his eyebrows. "That's very generous, Mr. Maddox. The irrigation system alone represents a considerable investment." Sam shrugged. "Consider it a contribution to the community's agricultural future." After signing the new loan agreement, Zara left the bank feeling as though she were walking in a dream. The spring sunshine seemed brighter, the air sweeter. Her farm, her home, was truly hers again. Sam fell into step beside her as she walked toward the mercantile where she had tied her horse. "Congratulations," he said quietly. "I can hardly believe it," Zara replied. "If you hadn't intervened with Jennings, hadn't pushed for an investigation, you would have found another way," Sam assured her. "You're not a woman who gives up easily." Zara stopped walking and turned to face him. "Sam, I don't know how to thank you for all you've done. Not just exposing Jennings, but the irrigation system, the improvements. You've invested so much in a property that's now officially not yours." Sam's expression was unreadable. "I told you, it was the right thing to do." "Let me repay you at least for the materials and labor," Zara insisted. "The bank offered financing." "No," Sam said firmly. "I don't want your money, Zara." "Then what do you want?" she asked, frustrated by his stubborn generosity. Sam hesitated, seeming to struggle with his answer. "I want—" He stopped, then tried again. "I want to know that justice was done." "That's enough." But Zara, who had come to know this man over the past weeks, sensed there was more he wasn't saying. "Is it? Really?" Sam sighed, looking away. "I should be getting back to town. Mrs. Chen expects her boarders for supper by 6. "Come to the farm instead," Zara suggested impulsively. "Henrietta's making her famous stew. We can celebrate the good news." Sam hesitated, then nodded. "I'd like that." That evening, after a celebratory meal that included not only Henrietta's stew, but also a pie the older woman had baked for the occasion, Zara and Sam walked in the orchard. The apple trees were in full bloom, their sweet fragrance filling the twilight air. "What will you do now?" Sam asked as they strolled between the rows of trees. "With the farm legally yours again, continue what we've started," Zara replied. "Complete the irrigation system, plant the crops we discussed." She glanced at him. "That is, if you're still willing to help." "Of course," Sam said quickly. "For as long as you want me to." Zara stopped walking and turned to face him. "And what about you, Sam? What are your plans now that you're not buying this farm?" Sam looked out over the orchard, his expression thoughtful. "I haven't decided yet. There's another property available near Sacramento that I've been considering. Good land, with water rights." The thought of Sam leaving sent an unexpected pang through Zara's heart. Over the past weeks, she had grown accustomed to his presence, his steady competence, his quiet humor, the way he listened when she spoke as if her words truly mattered to him. "You'd leave Porterville?" she asked, unable to keep the disappointment from her voice. Sam looked at her then, something vulnerable in his eyes. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether there's a reason for me to stay." The air between them seemed charged with unspoken possibilities. Zara found herself thinking of all the small moments they had shared working side by side in the fields, discussing plans for the farm over meals. The quiet evenings when they sat on the porch watching the sunset, while Henrietta and Johnson retired to their cabin. Somewhere along the way, this man had become important to her in ways she hadn't anticipated. "I think," Zara said carefully, "that completing the irrigation project is a very good reason to stay, at least for a while." Something like disappointment flickered in Sam's eyes, but he nodded. It would be irresponsible to leave it half-finished. They resumed walking, the silence between them now weighted with things unsaid. As they neared the edge of the orchard, Zara gathered her courage. "Sam," she began, "there's something I've been wondering." "Yes." "That first night when you found me in the barn, you said you'd heard about the foreclosure in town and thought you'd look at the property, but later you told me you'd specifically wanted to help me." She turned to face him. "Which was it?" Sam's expression grew serious. "Both, in a way. I heard about your situation and wanted to help, but buying the property seemed the most straightforward solution at the time." He hesitated, then added, "What I didn't expect was to find you still there, or to discover that Malcolm Jennings was an even bigger scoundrel than I'd initially thought." "And you certainly didn't expect to end up investing in a farm you don't own," Zara observed. "No," Sam agreed with a small smile. "That wasn't part of the plan. Do you regret it?" Sam's gaze was steady. "Not for a moment." As spring ripened into summer, Zara and Sam settled into a comfortable routine. He had taken a room at the Porterville Hotel, but spent most days at the farm, overseeing the completion of the irrigation system and helping with the planting. Zara found herself looking forward to his arrival each morning, a fact that both pleased and unsettled her. One particularly hot afternoon in late June, they were inspecting the newly operational irrigation channels in the north field when Sam removed his hat to wipe sweat from his brow. "It's working even better than I hoped," he remarked, surveying the controlled flow of water through the carefully engineered channels. "By next year you should see a significant increase in yield, even if the drought continues." Zara corrected him, "we should see an increase. This system is as much your creation as it is mine." Sam replaced his hat, shading his eyes from the relentless California sun. "I'm just glad it's functioning properly. There's always a risk with a new system like this." "You're too modest," Zara said. "Without your knowledge and investment, this farm would still be struggling through dry spells like everyone else in the valley." As they walked back toward the farmhouse for the midday meal, Zara was struck by how naturally they moved together, their strides matching, their conversation flowing easily from topic to topic. In just a few months, Sam had become an integral part of her life, a partner in the truest sense of the word. Henrietta had prepared a cold lunch, perfect for the summer heat: sliced ham, fresh bread, and vegetables from Zara's thriving garden. As they ate on the shaded porch, Sam broached a subject he'd been avoiding. "Johnson tells me the work on the main irrigation channels will be completed by the end of next week," he said, his tone carefully neutral. Zara felt her heart skip. The completion of the major irrigation work had been their shared goal for months, but it also meant that Sam's primary reason for remaining at the farm would soon be fulfilled. "That's wonderful news," she said, trying to match his casual tone. "Ahead of schedule, even." Sam nodded, his expression unreadable. "Johnson's a good foreman, knows how to keep things moving." He hesitated, then added, "I've been thinking it might be time for me to look at that property near Sacramento, now that things are well in hand here." Zara set down her fork, her appetite suddenly gone. "Of course," she said stiffly. "You've certainly fulfilled your obligation here, more than fulfilled it." "Zara," Sam began, then stopped, seeming to search for words. "It's all right, Sam," she said quickly. "I understand. You have your own plans, your own dreams. I'm grateful for everything you've done, but I never expected you to stay indefinitely." Sam's brow furrowed. "That's not—" "Excuse me," Zara interrupted, rising abruptly. "I just remembered I need to check on the new calves. Henrietta will wrap up the rest of your lunch if you're still hungry." Before Sam could respond, she fled down the porch steps and across the yard, tears stinging her eyes. How foolish she had been, allowing herself to develop feelings for a man who had always been clear about his intentions. Sam Maddox had helped her because it was the right thing to do, not because he felt any special attachment to her or to the farm. She reached the small pasture where the milk cows and their spring calves grazed in the afternoon shade. Leaning against the fence, Zara took deep breaths, trying to compose herself. She had known this day was coming. Sam had his own ambitions, his own desire for land. She couldn't expect him to abandon those dreams for her sake. The sound of footsteps behind her signaled that she hadn't escaped as cleanly as she'd hoped. Wiping her eyes quickly, Zara turned to find Sam approaching, his expression troubled. "Zara, what's wrong?" he asked, coming to stand beside her at the fence. "Nothing," she replied, forcing a smile. "Just overwhelmed by everything we've accomplished, I suppose." Sam studied her face, clearly not believing her explanation but choosing not to press. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said after a moment. "About what?" "About my plans." Sam turned to face the pasture, his profile strong against the summer sky. "I'm not leaving because I want to. I'm leaving because I thought. Because it seemed like the right thing to do now that the work is nearly complete." Zara's heart quickened. "What are you saying, Sam?" He turned to her, vulnerability plain in his eyes. "I'm saying that I don't want to go, Zara. These past months, working alongside you, seeing your determination, your intelligence, your love for this land, I've come to care for you in ways I never anticipated." Joy bloomed in Zara's chest, but caution held her back. "Then why were you planning to leave?" "Because I wasn't sure if you felt the same way," Sam admitted. "You've been through so much, losing your father, nearly losing the farm. I didn't want to complicate your life further if my feelings weren't reciprocated." Zara shook her head in wonder. "For such a perceptive man, you can be remarkably blind, Samuel Maddox." "What do you mean?" "I mean that I've been falling in love with you since the day you stood up to Malcolm Jennings on my behalf," Zara confessed, her voice soft but steady. "Every day since then, every conversation, every moment working side by side has only deepened those feelings." Sam's face transformed with hope. "Truly, truly," Zara confirmed. "I was devastated at the thought of you leaving. This farm wouldn't be the same without you, Sam. I wouldn't be the same." Sam reached for her hands, enfolding them in his larger ones. "Zara Zimmerman, when I came to Porterville, I was looking for land somewhere to build the future I'd dreamed of since losing my family's farm. What I found instead was you. Fierce, determined, resilient you." His voice grew husky with emotion. "I don't need land in Sacramento. Everything I want is right here." Zara's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of joy. "Are you saying you want to stay? Permanently?" "I'm saying I want to stay with you," Sam clarified. "Whether that's here on your farm or somewhere else entirely. It's not the land I've fallen in love with, Zara, it's you." Zara's heart soared at his declaration. "I want you to stay too," she whispered. "Here with me. We can build something together, Sam, something even better than what was here before." Sam released her hands only to frame her face gently, his eyes searching hers. "May I kiss you, Zara Zimmerman?" "I wish you would," she replied, smiling through her tears. Their first kiss was gentle, a tender promise beneath the summer sky. When they finally drew apart, Zara felt as though something fundamental had shifted in her world, as if all the pieces of a puzzle she hadn't known she was solving had suddenly fallen into place. In the weeks that followed, Sam officially moved into the farmhouse, taking the guest room down the hall from Zara's. Henrietta, with her unerring instinct for propriety, ensured that the arrangement remained respectable while making no secret of her approval. "About time you two figured out what was plain to see for months," she remarked one evening as they sat on the porch after supper. "Johnson and I were starting to wonder if we'd need to lock you both in the root cellar until you came to your senses." Sam laughed, his hand finding Zara's in the gathering twilight. "Sometimes the most obvious things are the hardest to see," he said, squeezing her fingers. As summer faded into autumn, the farm flourished under their joint care. The irrigation system proved its worth during the long, dry August days, keeping the crops verdant when other farms in the valley began to struggle. Word spread about their success, and neighboring farmers came to observe and learn. One crisp October morning, as they walked through the orchard inspecting the ripening apples, Sam stopped beneath the largest tree, the one Zara had told him her grandfather had planted the day the family first claimed the land. "I've been thinking," he said, watching as she tested an apple for ripeness. "A dangerous pastime," Zara teased, meeting his gaze with a smile. "Perhaps," Sam agreed, "but I've been thinking about the future, our future." Zara's heart quickened. "And what have you concluded?" Sam reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. "I've concluded that I love you, Zara Zimmerman, and that I want to spend the rest of my life by your side." He opened the box to reveal a simple gold ring set with a small diamond. "Will you marry me?" Joy burst like sunshine in Zara's chest. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Samuel Maddox, I will marry you." Sam slipped the ring onto her finger, then drew her into his arms for a kiss that held all the promise of their shared future. When they finally parted, both breathless and laughing, Zara looked up at the tree above them, its branches heavy with fruit, its roots deep in the soil of her family's land. "My grandfather would have liked you," she said softly. "He valued people who kept their word and stood for what was right." "I hope to live up to his standards," Sam replied, "and to be worthy of his granddaughter's love." They were married on a clear November day, with the harvest safely gathered and the farm prepared for winter. The ceremony took place in the Porterville church, with Henrietta and Johnson serving as witnesses. Judge Wilson, who had become a friend during the investigation of Malcolm Jennings, performed the service. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," he declared, beaming at the couple before him. "You may kiss your bride, Mr. Maddox." Sam needed no further encouragement. As their lips met, sealing their vows, Zara felt a profound sense of rightness, as if her life had been leading to this moment all along. The small reception that followed was held at the farm, with neighbors and townspeople gathering to celebrate. Even some of the bank board members attended, raising their glasses in toasts to the couple who had exposed corruption and brought a measure of justice to Porterville. As the sun set on their wedding day, Sam led Zara away from the festivities to a quiet spot near the creek, the place where he had first confronted Jennings all those months ago. "Happy?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist as they watched the water flow, now carefully channeled by the irrigation system that had brought new life to the farm. "Completely," Zara replied, leaning back against his chest. "Though I still can't quite believe how everything has turned out. A year ago I thought I'd lost everything. Now—" She twisted the gold band on her finger, still new and unfamiliar. "Now you have a husband who adores you," Sam finished, pressing a kiss to her temple, "and who will never let anyone threaten your home again." "Our home," Zara corrected him. "This farm belongs to both of us now." Sam smiled against her hair. "Our home," he agreed, "but it has always been yours in spirit, Zara. I'm just grateful to be part of its future." As they stood together in the gathering dusk, Zara reflected on the strange journey that had brought them to this moment. From the despair of foreclosure to the joy of love found, from sleeping in a barn to becoming mistress of her ancestral home, once more, it had been a path neither of them could have predicted. Yet somehow, despite all odds, they had found each other. The banker had taken her farm, and she had slept in the barn. A cowboy had almost bought the land, but instead had given her something far more precious: his heart, his strength, and a partnership that would endure for all the days to come. 2 years later, on a warm spring morning much like the one when Zara had found the foreclosure notice on her door, she stood on the porch of the farmhouse, watching as Sam approached from the fields. In her arms, their 6-month-old son gurgled happily, his tiny fingers tangled in the locket. Zara wore the one that had belonged to her mother, now containing miniature portraits of their small family. "How are my two favorite people this morning?" Sam called as he climbed the porch steps, his face brightening at the sight of his wife and son. "Hungry," Zara replied with a laugh. "Both of us, I think. Thomas has his father's appetite." Sam grinned, reaching for the baby. "That's my boy," he said proudly, lifting his son high in the air, eliciting a peal of delighted laughter. "Growing strong to help run the farm someday. Along with any brothers or sisters who might come along," Zara added with a meaningful smile. Sam's eyes widened. "Zara, are you saying?" She nodded, joy bubbling up within her. "Dr. Miller confirmed it yesterday. We're expecting again, Sam. Due in late November." Sam's whoop of joy startled Thomas, who blinked in surprise before deciding his father's excitement was cause for his own babbling celebration. Balancing the baby on one arm, Sam pulled Zara close with the other. "You've made me the happiest man in California," he murmured against her hair. "Again." Inside, over breakfast, they discussed the news. Henrietta, who had become like a grandmother to Thomas, immediately began planning what the new baby would need, while Johnson offered practical suggestions about hiring additional help for the harvest, given Zara's condition. "The farm's doing well enough to support another pair of hands," Sam agreed. "The irrigation system has more than paid for itself in increased yields." Indeed, the Maddox farm had become known throughout the San Joaquin Valley for its innovative water management and consistently abundant harvests. Farmers from as far away as Sacramento came to learn from Sam's techniques, and Zara's knowledge of traditional growing methods combined with her husband's modern approaches had created a truly remarkable operation. Malcolm Jennings, disgraced and dismissed from the bank, had left Porterville shortly after his misdeeds were exposed. Rumors placed him in San Francisco, where he reportedly found employment as a clerk in a shipping office, a significant fall for a man who had once wielded such power in their small community. The bank, under new management, had become a more equitable institution. The current president, a forward-thinking man named Harrison, had even approached Sam about serving on the board of directors, an offer he was seriously considering. "It would be a chance to ensure that what happened to you never happens to anyone else," Sam had pointed out when discussing the possibility with Zara. "You'd be excellent at it," she'd replied. "You understand both banking and farming, and you've always had a strong sense of justice." As they finished breakfast, Johnson arrived with news that the new irrigation extension to the southern fields was ready for testing. Sam rose to join him, pausing to kiss Zara and ruffle Thomas's dark curls. "Will you be all right if I'm gone most of the day?" he asked, his concern for her well-being evident even in this earliest stage of her pregnancy. Zara smiled, touched by his solicitude but determined not to be coddled. "We'll be fine. I promised Henrietta I'd help her with the preserves today, Nothing strenuous, I promise." After Sam departed, Zara sat for a moment in the sunlit kitchen, contentment washing over her. The farmhouse that had once echoed with the lonely silence of grief now buzzed with the joyful sounds of family life. The land that had nearly been lost now thrived under careful stewardship. And the woman who had once slept in a barn, bereft of hope, now found herself surrounded by love and possibility. Later that afternoon, as the sun slanted golden across the valley, Zara walked with Thomas to meet Sam in the orchard. The baby babbled happily in her arms, reaching for the light filtering through the apple leaves above them. She found her husband beneath the grandfather tree, as she'd come to think of it, the ancient apple that had witnessed generations of her family's history. Sam was deep in conversation with a neighboring farmer, gesturing toward the irrigation channels visible in the distance. Catching sight of his wife and son, Sam's face lit with pleasure. He quickly concluded his business and crossed to meet them, taking Thomas from Zara's arms. "I was just showing Peterson the secondary channels," he explained. "He's thinking of implementing something similar on his property." "The system's reputation spreads," Zara observed with a smile. "Soon you'll need to write a book on modern irrigation techniques." Sam laughed, bouncing Thomas gently. "Maybe someday. For now, I'm content to share what we've learned through direct demonstration." He looked around at the orchard, the fields beyond, the farmhouse visible in the distance. "It's amazing to think how far we've come in just a few years." "From foreclosure to prosperity," Zara agreed, slipping her arm through his free one. "From despair to joy. From strangers to family," Sam added softly. As they walked back toward the house together, the setting sun painting the western sky in brilliant hues of gold and crimson, Zara felt a profound sense of gratitude. The path that had brought them here had been unexpected and often difficult, but she wouldn't change a single step of the journey. For it had led her to this moment, walking through her ancestral orchards with the man she loved and the children they were raising together, secure in the knowledge that the land would remain in their family for generations to come. The banker had taken her farm, and she had slept in the barn. But love and justice had prevailed, creating a legacy far richer than she could ever have imagined.